With over 400 celebrity interviews and tons of pop culture nerdiness, Too Opinionated is a safe haven for your inner geek. Find us at meistercon.com or on YouTube under MeisterCon Pod. And please subscribe. It would really help us out. Thanks, everybody. Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Too Opinionated. Look who I have with me today. It's actress, comedian, activist, Alison Arngrim. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I'm so happy that you're on here. Obviously, you were a kind of a staple of my childhood. You know, I felt like we kind of grew up together.
Right. Because, Little House on the Prairie, we're coming up on our 50th anniversary. 2024, next year will be 50 years since Little House started.
Isn't that amazing? It doesn't feel like it's been. I'll take that back. Sometimes it feels like it's been.
Some days. It's anyone who told me that I'd be 61 and preparing for the 50th anniversary. I mean, no, that people still be watching the show and talking about it like daily. I mean, and the crazy part is there's people who just started watching it. That's what gets me. Okay, the people on Facebook who say, I'm older, I started when it started. Others, I watched it in reruns after school in the 90s. I taught on. And then there's these people like, I just started watching it. I'm 25 years old and I literally just started watching Little House on the Prairie today. And they're all shocked. They're like, does Albert die or become a doctor? And everyone's like, oh my God. Spoiler alert.
It still holds up pretty well. It still holds up pretty well.
It does. Well, that's the thing. We had really good writing and obviously great casting. And so it does. It's not like you watch a lot of shows from the 70s and you go, wow, this is really the 70s. But with Little House, because it's the 1800s, who could tell?
Did it help that, when Big Bang was so popular and they had Amy on there that was such a fan of Little House on the Prairie, do you think that spiked interest?
Oh, the day when Sheldon turned around and went, peanut butter wasn't invented yet. Oh my God. Little House on the anachronism, if you ask me. Yeah, the fact that's like huge, that just cracked everyone up. And then we have these resurgences every few years where people go nuts. And of course, the pandemic, everyone was home and they wanted comfort TV. And then they saw the Ingalls were going through much worse times. And then they saw that there was an episode called Quarantine, and there was an episode called Plague. And they're like, wait, did they know what is happening? And then that thing where they were running out of flour in the stores because everyone started baking bread.
Yes.
That's our fault. That's totally our fault. They were all home, watched The Little House on the Prairie and said, well, I'll start baking. And everyone started doing arts and crafts and baking. And so people who baked once a year started baking every month. People who baked once a month started baking every week. And people used to bake maybe once a week, every 2 weeks, were baking every day. So suddenly there was this like you couldn't find yeast and flour in half the supermarkets because everyone went, I'm Ingalls, I'm going to go bake.
I know at some point we all just kind of collectively decided we're just going to eat. If we're stuck inside, we're just going to eat.
Food, we can't go out. Are they delivering food? Yes, great. Let's do it.
Let's just eat. Yeah. I kind of miss the 70s TV days because back then we had the 3 channels or maybe 4 if you had the extra dial, and it was it was actually appointment television. Because that was, if you missed an episode, you're stuck till at least summer.
Months you had to wait. And that's why people say, hey, I'm watching Little House now. And of course, they're streaming them back to back on Amazon, or they have the DVDs or whatever they have. So they have all the episodes. They're just going to click. And they said, well, in season 5, they said so-and-so. But, in season 1, it's like, dude, it was physically impossible for someone to watch an episode from season 1 and an episode from season 5 back to back and compare them. So when they said something and they went, hey, is this continuity from 5 years ago? And they went, who the hell is going to know? How in the hell are they ever going to figure that out? What are they going to do? Watch them all back to back the whole 7 years? And here we are. And people are like going, no, that's not right. Because they said in season 2 that this was good.
Yeah, come on. Are you planning a big celebration for the 50th year?
There's a lot going on. There's a thing, Simi Valley. We shot the show out at what they call Big Sky Ranch in Simi Valley. So the city of Simi Valley, in conjunction with some cast members and a bunch of event producers and people who love the show, have all gotten together. We've been having meetings. And in March of 2024, there's going to be an enormous like fair festival with cast members and screenings, and they're like, talking about like, can we recreate like part of the set, like I mean, it's going to be off the charts. Little House, it's going to be Little House Mania, Woodstock. It's going to be Little House of Prairie Palooza in Simi Valley in March of 2024, and then a lot of the historical sites, Walnut Grove, etc. Obviously, we're probably going to do something, so it's going to get nuts.
That's pretty great. Are you still close with some of the cast?
Oh man, all of them. Somebody asked me like, how many cast members do you have on speed dial on your phone? And it was like 16 or something. It was
Oh
like
my gosh.
everybody. And even crew members. Yeah, we have friends who worked on the show, and some people live in the neighborhood, live nearby, and then others have moved further away, but some people moved back to LA. So we have quite a gang, and we still get together. We try to get together at least once a year. We were doing all funerals, which was like a drag. Like every time we got together, somebody died, and we said we gotta stop doing that. And then we had a lot of us were at the Hollywood show in Burbank some months back. And we said, we always would go to the smokehouse in Burbank. Well, after somebody died, we'd go to Forest Lawn, then we'd go to Smokehouse. We said, look, nobody died. Let's get dinner at the Smokehouse. And so we had a huge party in a hall. Yeah, Melissa Gilbert
was there.
Dean was there. It was great.
That's what happens as you get older. You tend to only get together with people when somebody dies. That's a terrible time to get together.
And we're this extended family. So every now and then we try to have an event where, we're just got together because we wanted to see each other. So yeah.
Yeah. Did you any inkling when you first got on that show that 50 years later it'd still be a thing? You'd still be talking about it, still be friends with these people?
Freaking way. No way. We were shocked that it ran as long. Like the third year, it's like, this thing's still on. We were just in shock. And then it's like, it's not going to, when I signed the contract, I'm freaking 12, and I signed this contract for 7 years. They said, don't worry, honey, it's not going to go 7 years. So, right, 7 years. And then
you really did grow up on the show.
Yeah. And so we thought this one, and it was Michael who knew. Michael Landon knew. He completely knew. And he said it to Dean. He said it to Melissa. He said it to a bunch of people, and they all thought he was nuts when he said it. He would say, long after we're gone, you realize, he'd point to the set and say, after we're all dead and gone, they're going to be watching these episodes. And both Dean and Melissa and everyone else he said that to went, woo, cuckoo. I just thought, wow, he's really delusional. And it's like, and here we all are. So he knew he was onto something.
How did we not get a Nellie spinoff show?
Well, the spinoffs were weird. Spinoffs were like more from the current modern day type shows. Technically, Father Murphy was technically a spinoff of Little House, even though it was people playing completely different characters. And it was shot. It was the same crew, and they were shot just over the hill in the same lot. They talked about it towards the end. There was some noise about that, but then it was year 7 and everyone had grown up and were leaving. So my contract ended. It was like, do you want to come back? And of course, if they'd said it's only going to run another 2 years, I might have done it, but they were like, can you sign for like another 5? And I was like,
oh yeah.
So and Melissa Sue Anderson, who's married, she said, no, 7 years, I can't keep doing this. And so people were leaving at the end of 7 years. A lot of people left, and so they said, well, it's a new beginning. And they tried to keep it going, and it just didn't have the same oomph. And NBC, so I said, Little House was like the redheaded stepchild. We were not the popular show. And, people in LA and New York, they all watched it, but they'd lie and say they didn't. But everyone else in the country did. We didn't get the big TV Guide write-ups. We didn't get Emmys. We were like those people, and now we're on, and everybody else is gone.
Right. That's right. As fans, we knew.
You knew, but that's the thing. It's worked out well for me because I had a book come out. Gosh, it's like what 2020. I can't talk. 2010. My book, Confessions of a Prairie Bitch: How I Survived Nellie Oleson and Learned to Love Being Hated. So that came, and there a lot.
That has to be the longest book title ever.
Well, I kind of, when they said, okay, I said, we're calling Confessions of a Prairie Bitch. And they said, well, we want to do one of those how I blah, blah titles. And I went, okay. And I came back a couple days later and said, can I say then how I survived Nellie Oleson and learned to love being hated. And they went, oh, that's funny. And because it's how I learned to stop worrying and love the bomb. It's a Doctor Strangelove reference. I put in a Doctor Strangelove joke.
I love that.
Title of my book. And they went, sure. And like, they didn't even know I was doing that. I was like, so it became a hit. Melissa's book was hit. There's a lot of actors who were in shows in the 70s who put out autobiographies, and they're not all hits. Sometimes it's all they can do to get a deal. And
Right.
and many people, actors write books, many very good books. And I made the New York Times bestseller list.
Yeah.
How does it, someone from a show from the 70s making the New York Times bestseller list? Like what is it? And all the books from the show from the actors have been successful. So, and they're still rating the thing. So that's the thing. We have a niche that we've somehow cornered in culture that other shows didn't.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not surprised, because just the show was just, it was good. It was well written, well acted, but it was comforting to watch.
Yeah, exactly. And it's very emotional. So when I'm heading out to France end of the month, and in France they love La Petite Maison dans la Prairie, because it's so emotional. Oh, Charles, he cries. He is sensitive. And so, yeah, there you go. And that's the thing, because it's a very emotional show. And people get kind of pulled in.
How did you start going to France? Because I know you do like a whole show that's in French.
I have a new show. I have my third show now. So I was doing stand up forever since I was a teenager, and I'd done theater, and I'd been doing a one woman show, Confessions of Prairie Bitch, and that's kind of how actually the book came out of the show instead of the show out of the book. Very crazy. I always do everything completely backwards.
Of course.
And then I went to France to do a talk show, and that's when I found out they were obsessed with Little House on the Prairie, and they really like Nellie Oleson, or as I like to tease them, they don't think Nellie Oleson's mean; they think she's French. And so I thought, I got to get in. So I started going to France all the time and doing talk shows and things. And I did a movie there. It was great. And so then I met this guy, Patrick Loubatière, and he said, we could do your show in French. I mean, it's a little difficult. It has to be an adaptation because it's French, and some of the jokes obviously don't translate. Next thing I know, I'm on stage and we're doing this whole like comedy review about Little House on the Prairie with this guy, Patrick. And then we did Confession d'une Gasse, and then we did Le Mal au Trésor de Nellie Oleson, Nellie Oleson's Trunk of Treasures. And starting in March, we're doing Nellie Oleson Allumer les années 80, which is basically Nellie Oleson lights up the 80s. It's like a game show / comedy review / sketch thing where it's 80s nostalgia stuff, 80s music, 80s TV, 80s celebrities, and like how they tie into Little House on the Prairie, and how they tie into like French singers like, Daft Punk, who we know here in America. Well, they're French, and the father of one of them was actually a huge star in France. So like all the French American connections and all this like, and we have game portions where the audience actually gets to play along. It's like, okay, get your buzzers, and so it's going to be wonderfully wacky. And we were doing this. That's what I'm doing in March, is going around to the French countryside and doing a whole sketch show in French.
Mean, that's a pretty good gig. That's not bad.
Like there's worse things I could be doing. So doing that, and then there's a bunch of shows coming, autograph shows coming up. We've now, Little House is now hot on the autograph circuit. We're invited to stuff. And then there's all these sort of like the Prairie circuit, like Walnut Grove and DeSmet, South Dakota, the places they lived. And then there's something like, do you know what Pickers Mart is?
No.
I was like, what the hell is a Pickers Mart? When they come and say, what's a Pickers Mart? And there are these little festivals, like day or 2 day things. And they have like these, like a glorified rummage sale, but they have food and games and things, but they have stuff like, when you're doing that shabby chic, and people in their garden will have an old piece of fence and an old watering can and whitewash, cute things like it's where people buy all that stuff and antiques and things. Pickers Mart. And they try to have,
really popular.
They're huge. They're all over the country. And this guy who runs a bunch of them said he tries to always add some feature, something, music, some kind of entertainment. And he booked in several of us from Little House to come in, me, Miss Beadle, and Pat Laborato's Andy Garvey. There was they had to call the cops. The traffic going out of the parking lot to Pickers Mart in like the middle of nowhere. And the cars are going around the block, and there was like a fender bender in the parking lot. The cops were called, and the police came and went, because it was a really small town. And they said, what in the name of God are you doing that you have this many cars? Like nothing happens here. There's like 8,000 cars, like people backed up into the street. What are you doing? It's a picker. They're coming for old watering cans. It's a pickers. What is happening? And he's like, I have half the cast of like Little House on the Prairie. And they went, what? And so he said, we're doing this again. So now I've been making the rounds of pickers, the Pickers Mart.
I love that.
We're going to Macon, Missouri, and we're going to Iowa. And it was just like, and a bunch of the cast are like, this is fun. Let's do this. So we're now, a bunch of us are going, and we have a high old time. And so then sometimes we do like Fanboy, those kind of autograph shows. And then I have my stand-up act. I do that.
That's
and
busy.
then I have the French thing. So there's always something to do. And I made a movie in 2020, height of the pandemic. I managed to make a movie. Like no one was working. And they said, it's going to be a little difficult. We're doing full protocols. Like the camera's over there, and you take your mask off 2 seconds before we say action. And we were going to have this great scene with 20,000 extras, but that's totally not happening now. But we're going to. And next thing I know, I'm on a play. And it was called Even in Dreams. And I play a really evil band manager. I'm so evil.
Oh,
it's a
very
nice
nice.
young girl trying to stick to her morals, keep her band together.
That's a different role for you.
Yeah. Well, I get the call a lot, like, okay, this part's a complete bitch. Do you want to play her? Yes, I do. And it's fun. And so the part was kind of written for me and Deborah, the evil band manager, because it's all about this very nice girl trying to keep her band together and stick to her values in the hard driven music business. And I try to ruin everything. I almost ruin her life because it's what I do. Yeah. But I've made a movie. I'm doing stuff. I do things.
Yeah, you're so busy. That's amazing. Was it difficult back then? Because if you play that type of role now, no big deal. Everybody's like, okay.
But
if you're 12 and you're playing the mean girl, I mean, was that difficult, or did you just be like, I'm just acting?
I loved it. I always liked the villains in movies and TV shows. So when I got Little House, it's like, I'm the villain and I'm the comedy relief. And this is, I get to do what? So yeah, I jumped in with both feet. But it was weird because child villains weren't like a thing. Yeah.
Right.
We'd had the bad seed, Patty McCormick in the 50s, but that was based on a play. And even then that was considered shocking. Margaret and Dennis the Menace was very annoying. I'm friends with her. She's lovely. But she was very annoying, but she was really evil. And so to have a series that wasn't like a contemporary sitcom, but was like a wholesome family show, and then have this little girl who's really terrible. That was very unusual for the 70s. It was, yeah. Now every show, hell, half the time the hero is like bitchy and terrible. That's totally common. And to have a teenage character who's like dreadful. All the shows will have some teenage girl who's completely snotty, and everyone's like, oh, it's the Nellie Oleson, and totally normal. But in the 70s, they were like, wait, what is she doing? Wow.
Yeah. It was different from anything else or any other role on television.
Yeah, but everyone had a Nellie at their school. Everyone could identify it. You all had a Nellie at your school, and everyone had a Mrs. Olsen at their job. Everybody knew. They all went, oh, it's like just like that woman. I hate her. So everyone could identify. They all knew who these people were. They all had somebody like that in their life. They were totally into it.
Yeah, of course. I saw that was a wig you were wearing. I had no idea.
It was they tried curling my hair for months, and what a disaster that was. Had very straight hair, and also we're out in Simi Valley in the heat and the humidity. The curls, So they said we just can't go on. I was sleeping in curlers, 12. I had to sleep in curlers and come in at 4 o'clock in the morning and get my hair just like, what are we doing? So they said, okay, we're getting a wig. So that took a little load off, but the wig looked great. Took a lot less time to do than my hair, and it stayed perfect, like all day long. Didn't matter what, they'd throw me down a hill in a wheelchair, and the hair was perfect. But it was excruciatingly uncomfortable because in order for it to stay on, it's one thing, people normally wear wigs for a couple of hours. Yeah. A 9-hour shift in a wig, and there's a big middle comb right here because that thing's got to stay on during mud fights. So that's just jammed. So I'm like, whoa, ouch. And then I lost count of how many hairpins got like jammed in there to hold it steady. So it looked great, but absolutely painful contraption I've ever had to deal with.
Yeah. I had no idea. I don't think anybody really knew.
Oh yeah, her like look
Wigs.
at it. So I watch movies now and I see something that's in the 1700s or the 1800s and they're all decked out in the period clothes and the wigs and I just sit there and go, ow, ow.
Yeah, you know.
And they're shooting something where they're way out in the desert and they're in the blazing sun. I'm like going, I bet 3 people have passed out by now during the scene. Yeah, I can tell. Because it's just too hot. And then people those clothes, the wigs, it's brutal.
Yeah, it had to be. When I was probably 7th or 8th grade. I was homesick from school, and at that time, in the morning, they would show reruns of Love Boat and Fantasy Island. In the morning I was home. I remember that one. They showed both of your episodes back to back.
They did. Did you show my Love Boat and my Fantasy Island the same day?
Same day. It was like one was on at 11, the other one came on at noon, and yeah, it was. Awesome. I remember that because I was like, "Hey, there she is again."
and Love Boat was great. It was like a bitchy child actress, horrible child actress, Becky Daniels, come to film the Becky Daniels show on Love Boat, and I'm awful. And Nancy Culp, Mrs. Jane was my aunt. It's brilliant. I love that woman. And so all this great stuff's going on. I make poor Jill Whalen be my stand-in, and I'm horrible to her. And then Fantasy Island. I am in. Yay, a cult classic, weirdest episode of Fantasy Island ever. Michelle Pfeiffer's in it. If you watch the episode, like the other storyline, Donnie Most, Michelle freaking Pfeiffer is in Fantasy Island, and Heather O'Rourke from Poltergeist plays me as like a 10-year-old. It's like the most bizarre episode. So Eve Plum, Jan Brady, Eve Plum comes to Fantasy Island, and she's pregnant, but she's not going to live to see her child grow up. So they take her into the future, and so Jan Brady, Eve Plum plays my mom. We're totally like the same age, so she's my mother. What is happening? And then what happens is I've run away from home and I've become a prostitute. I've been sold into prostitution and I'm a teenage girl and I get auctioned. So I'm like, Fantasy Island is supposed to be about romance and people's happy fantasies. This is like a horrible, dark story about human trafficking where I'm like 16 and I get sold to some guy named Lucky Eddie and she winds up rescuing me and everything. But it's like, wait, this is horrible.
It's like, well, it was terrific as a young teenager. I was like, this is the best thing I've ever watched.
Right? And I get rescued, but it's like an episode of Fantasy Island with Alison Arngrim, Heather O'Rourke, Michelle Pfeiffer, Donnie Most, and Eve Plum. And the episode is a sad, dark tale of human trafficking. And then when it ends, the deal is that Eve Plum's character, they finally say it all worked out and show her a picture of me with my husband and children, like it's all okay. But then she goes home to die. The end of the show, she dies. At least knowing that her daughter is not currently being trafficked. And that's just
I wonder who wrote that one. Who came up with that?
What weirdo? Who wrote this? So that's why I said weirdest episode of Fantasy Island. It's like totally not a happy episode.
Yeah, I love that episode because it was just, I was like, this is the craziest thing I've ever watched.
Right? It's not like that. So yeah, so I can say with pride, I am in the weirdest episode of Fantasy Island ever. Yes.
You did a Christmas movie, Make the Yuletide Gay.
Yeah, such a great Christmas movie.
It's a great Christmas movie.
Adorable. And it pops up. It becomes like when Netflix has like most popular downloaded Christmas movies. It's like in the top 10 because it's just so cool.
But you know, that movie, you see a lot of those type movies now. And it hasn't been that long ago, but there wasn't those type of movies then.
One of the first, like they're doing stuff now on Hallmark where they're talking about doing like gay character scenarios in a Christmas movie. And people even now are going, I don't know, are you ready for that yet? It's only 2023. But the time that we made Make the Yuletide Gay, there was not. There were gay movies, straight movies, and there were some like mainstream movies where wow, we actually have a gay or lesbian character where like it's starting to happen. It was it seems right, but a wholesome family, adorable Christmas movie,
right? And
it's these 2 college guys who are in love, and for those of you who haven't go rent it because it's this darling young man goes to visit his parents, and the only thing is he forgot to tell them that he was gay. He's been like out for it, just did not tell them. And his boyfriend shows up unannounced. Chaos ensues, but his parents are darling, and it's a goofy Christmas movie. I'm the obnoxious neighbor. and it's so sweet. It's a great movie, and
Yeah.
and the number of people who've watched it, stories I've heard from people who said they watched it at Christmas and wound up coming out to the family, or like that was
Yeah.
like let's watch Make the Yuletide Gay. Like,
I
but
could
it's a
totally see that happening because it kind of made that okay, if that makes sense,
the
watching the
ending, which I
movie.
won't do like spoiler alert, but the
Yeah.
ending is a fabulous whole like twist thing, and it's just hilarious.
Yeah, it was
And
kind of ahead of its time a little bit.
and the acting, and like all sorts of cool people in it. But Gates McFadden's in it. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, it's like everybody's in this thing. So it's a really cool movie. So I can say I have a Christmas movie. I've done a Christmas movie, so I can check that box.
I wanted to ask you about Life Interrupted.
Yes. So Mason freaking Reese, of all people. Mason Reese, remember Underwood Devil Ham? That's my good fun. And he basically looks the same but grown up. It's like nothing's changed.
He does. He
It's
really
the
does.
same. It's like, oh, it's Mason Reese. Like, who else would that be? So he met a friend of mine, this guy, this writer, Steve Wishnov, is great. So he's like, I think I want to do something in TV. And he's been like owning and running bars and restaurants in New York. So like, when you're doing okay, it's like, yeah, I got a restaurant, yeah, but I want to go on TV again. So he writes this crazy show, and I get this phone call from my friend going, you want to be in this pilot thing we're doing? I'm like, yeah. And he says, okay, well, you play Mason Reese's wife. I go, what? No, it's okay, you're his ex-wife. I go, oh, okay. And I'm like, oh, okay. No, you're not married to him, you're his ex-wife, and you're really mean to him. I'm like, okay, I see this going. Oh, but you've remarried. I have, to a woman. I'm like, interesting. He goes, oh, wait, but it's Erin Murphy. And I know her. I go, Erin Murphy was Tabitha on Bewitched. I'm like, I love her. So there was no problem doing that. I was like, what's Erin? And then, of course, that really helped because in France, the papers said, gay mariage avec Tabitha et Nellie. Nellie and Tabitha and gay marriage. And then everyone's in that too. Michael Learned is in that. Dawn Wells is in that.
Yeah, Dawn Wells is in that.
Half the town, Robbie Ritz, like everybody is in that one. So, so yeah, that one was and it's about like an ex-child star who's trying to adjust to middle age, and it's not going well. And I'm his ex-wife and still giving him a very hard time. So,
that has to be, those type of shows or movies have to be kind of fun because every actor kind of had the same experience. They were all childhood actors. They kind of grew up in the business. That has to be kind of neat, I think.
Well, it's fun because these kind of projects are great. And then there's Living on a Prairie, a similar thing, another one of these web series. I get this call, this woman I met in New York who's a Broadway theater actress, who's like a major Broadway theater actress. So she, Pamela Bob, and I'd seen her on stage. And so she says, I've never done this, but I'm writing this TV pilot. I've always wanted to write a series. I'm like, really? She goes, but I'm obsessed with Little House on the Prairie, because she's like really, really, really obsessed with Little House on the Prairie, almost as much as the character in the thing. And she says, so I've written this thing that's about a woman who's possibly even more like, Pamela is able to work and has a husband and kids, but the woman in Living on a Prairie is so obsessed she can't get married to like work. She says, woman's like more obsessed than I am, and I want you to be in it and play her therapist. So I'm sitting there, it's like no idea that it's me, and I'm talking to this woman going, this show was on in the 70s, you really need to move on with your life. Hysterical. So she wrote it, and I laughed my ass off reading. I said, yeah, I'll do it. So these kind of projects, these new media stuff, web things, they're great because obviously they're a lower budget, but it allows writers who may not be huge studio name writers or new writers stuff to put together these really creative, completely new ideas and shows, and a lot of us actors to get together and go, hey, I haven't seen you in a while. Yeah, you want to go do this crazy web pilot? We'll be in it together. Yeah, let's go do that. That'll be fun. And they're great. And so I totally encourage that. But yeah, Living on a Prairie, Life Interrupted. I done a bunch of them and had a great time every time.
Yeah, that's terrific. When did you start doing stand-up?
I was 15, and I was hanging out with stand-ups because my dad was a manager, and he was managing a comedy group called the Village Idiots, who were amazing. Peter Jurasik came out of the Village Idiots.
Okay.
Jan Fisher, who wrote the movie The Lost Boys.
Yeah.
people like that
Love
came out
Jan
of this
Fisher.
Village Idiots. Yeah, the Village Idiots. That's Jan Fisher, Mark Ganzel, Teresa Ganzel's brother is Mark. Yeah, all these like, yeah,
okay.
Robin Hunt, Mark Ganzel, Pete Jurasik, and Jan Fisher. That's the Village Idiots. So kind of talented, kind of a little bit, but they were really funny. And so they were doing sketch stuff. So I was hanging out the clubs, and I actually started kind of heckling this comic. Well, this comic was doing audience participation. I kind of gave him a hard time. And he said, if you think this is so easy, you should try it. And I went, there's an idea.
Okay. Yeah.
And so the Village Idiots, Pete and Jan, and wrote my first stand-up act at 15.
Oh.
My first stand-up act for Jan Fisher and Peter
Do you
Jurasik.
still remember your first joke that you told?
I think so. It's because I was 15. And so, and everyone was shocked to see this young 15-year-old girl in a club with all of these skeevy people. And so I said, yes, it's okay. I just got back from the Roman Polanski daycare center. Boy, are my legs tired. And people went, ah! And then I just started talking about, I mean, we had all kinds of insane stuff in it. And it was pretty damn good. And then eventually started writing my own stuff. And so I started doing it as a stand-up, and I went all over the country. And I was at the Comedy Store and the Improv and everything. So I was in the trenches, and I'm in the book. The I'm Dying Up Here, the book about the Comedy Store. I'm in the freaking book. I mean, I just think
that's awesome.
So I did real stand up with all these kind of people. And I knew, you know, Robin Williams and Jay Leno and all these people before they were anybody, and it was amazing. And so then I wound up though in adulthood, as it were, in my 40s, and I wound up doing this one woman show where I tell all true stories from my life and this whole thing, and then there's video clips. I talk about the Fantasy Island, and it's hysterical.
I've got a really good actor friend. She was an actress back in the 80s and 90s, but she lives in Normandy, and we're going to go visit her. So I want to try to time it so I'm over there. Maybe we can sneak to one of your shows at some point.
Normandy is beautiful. It is also very cold in Normandy in the winter.
Yes.
You maybe want to go to Normandy in the spring or the summer because it is northern.
Well,
France.
you're going over like in March or something, right?
I'm heading out into February, but I'll go to Paris, which isn't too bad. It'll be like rainy. Yeah. And then I'm actually going. Yeah, my first show is kind of north. I gotta be. Thanks for reminding me. I gotta pack the good socks because the first show is a little bit north. But then I'm down in the west, and then I'm like way down, practically in the south of France. And then by the time I have to do eastern France, which is very cold, it'll be late March. It'll be lovely.
Yeah. That's the plan. We're going to try to come to a show. Now, whether or not I can understand any of it, if you're doing it in French, I don't know. But I'll laugh when everybody else laughs.
It is in French. Although I've had people come to it, didn't speak. I've had people come in who were like in town from the country, and they went, "Yeah, no, I got it." So I don't know the hell you were saying, but there was so much carrying on and making of faces and gallivanting all of stage. It was a riot. I figured out what the hell was happening because it's very broad. It's like, okay, yeah, you'll catch on soon enough.
I know that you have got some causes that you're very passionate about. Would you like to speak about those for a minute?
Yeah, back in the 80s, Steve Tracy, who played Percival, my husband on Little House, went public with his diagnosis of AIDS. And I remember it was the 80s again. It was like nobody was talking about this. This was not, Rock Hudson had just died. It was like way back. It was pre-Magic Johnson.
People were shocked when that happened.
They were, and this is when people thought they were going to get it off a doorknob. I mean, it was just like chaos. And here he is going, everyone's calling my house, going, what is happening? And so I went down to AIDS Project Los Angeles and volunteered, and I took their hotline training, which was amazing. It's like going to medical school. And so I had to pass an exam and everything to be able to answer the phones. So I learned so much about the disease and what was going on. I was able to help people and help him. And then he died in 86, 32. And he was on experimental drugs because they didn't have any not experimental drugs yet. And he was the kind of guy, when I said, are they going to work? He said, oh, no, it's too late for me. I'm just doing this so they can save someone after I'm gone. Wow. That's the kind of guy he was. So I continued, and I wound up doing a talk show called AIDS Vision. It's funny because I now have a whole show I do called the Alison Arngrim Show, where I interview celebrities. And in the 80s, I had a thing, AIDS Vision, where I was interviewing doctors and people from AIDS Project Los Angeles.
Very nice.
So I did a lot of that. And I've gone all over the country and raised money for different smaller AIDS projects and done education for people about how to take care of their friends and help. Really amazing stuff for years and years. And then in fact, there's a documentary coming out about all the people at like APLA and people around that time period called Commitment to Life. And I'm interviewed. I'm in that. I mean everything. And then in the gosh, I guess 2002, three, what year is this? I was approached to be on the board of a group called the National Association to Protect Children, or
Right.
protect.org. And interesting angle, because they were fighting child abuse, but they said, we're going to take on some of the legislative issues. What? They said,
Oh,
right. So here you have a case where the perpetrator has been caught, and in fact, they have confessed, and they've gone to court, and they have been duly convicted of sexually abusing this child. And then they get to cop a special plea because they're related to them, so they don't have to go to jail, just therapy, and they basically walk out of the courthouse with the child.
that's
We're like,
awful.
yeah, that's probably bad.
Yeah,
Like,
that's
why?
awful.
Why would that be a thing?
Yeah.
And in some countries, they actually, I think Canada has a thing called breach of trust, where it's actually a greater penalty if you're the child's parent, because hello.
Right.
Whereas in many states in the US, there's a far lesser penalty for abusing a child. The same crime that could get you 20 years can get you a few months or probation if you're related to the child.
That doesn't even make sense.
And I mean like continuous abuse, multiple victims, all like worst
Yeah.
case scenario stuff. Like what? Not like even lesser offenses, just like, oh, they're related.
Yeah,
And we
that's
went, no,
terrible.
no, no, no. So we changed that law in many, many states in the US. And then we also partnered with the police teams called the ICAC, Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force. These are the
Yeah.
people who find the child porn and trafficking and everything. And we started working with them, getting them technology, training people to apprentice them to, and that was huge. It resulted in a lot more arrests and people being apprehended. We have the thing, the Weiss Center for Child Rescue Technology, actually developing technology to make apprehending
Yes.
of these people easier. And then on the federal level, we said, oh, how much is the budget for these police whose only job is to rescue children? Yeah, we only give them this much. We're thinking of cutting it. It's like, y'all should be raising that. Like maybe that should be doubled or tripled
Yeah.
actually, because of the scale of the problem. And so we got the budgets raised for those police teams that protect children. So we did all this kind of stuff. And I thought, who is doing this? Nobody was doing this. So nobody was doing zero. So we did that. And it's
Amazing.
still going, and we're still doing a really fascinating stuff with the pandemic. It's been very difficult because a lot of children were at home, and yay, school on the internet, but yay, wait, children on the internet. And so all of the horrible people on the internet looking
Yeah.
for children were like, oh, it's a buffet. So we're looking at training people to work even in corporate settings to look for where this stuff is happening.
Love
But
that.
yeah, we're still doing all kinds of weird stuff. And then we're looking at education programs for children and families. And just, yeah, well, the problem is enormous, just enormous, the abuse of children. And I'm so pleased that we've been able to actually make major structural changes.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, good for you. And obviously it was needed. I can't believe that stuff was out there. Nobody had done anything about it.
Oh, it was stunning. And it's like, I mean, some of it was, yes, there's people who are just evil, but some of it was just like laziness. Like,
Yeah.
so if I'm a prosecutor and I can just let everyone go and cop a plea, I can technically say I have 100% conviction record. Okay, wait, none of them went to jail because the conviction was, I said, you don't have to go to jail at all if you sign here. So they all left. But they were, so yeah, so some of it was just people being painfully lazy and not caring about what happened.
Yeah, that amazes me that
Yeah,
stuff
and there
goes
were
on.
people who'd found ways to profit and run various rackets where they could make money off that kind of deal. Because there's always someone who can do that. There's always
Always.
somebody who's like, hey, I found a way to make money off the misery of other people.
Yeah, always. Yeah.
So yeah, so there were so many different factors at play where it's just like, God, people are terrible. Wow, wait, that people really do. They're really doing that. Okay, yeah, we're stopping that. No, that's not happening. And so
Yeah,
we were
I'm so
able to
glad
put a
you
damper.
did.
We put a damper on that.
Yeah, that's terrific. Well, Allison, thank you so much for taking a little
Thank
bit of
you.
time with me. Such a fan of yours. It's so, for me, my son always he doesn't have the passion I do for television and those shows from the 70s and 80s, 90s, because now kids today, they have so many choices and stuff, and we just didn't have that back
And they can watch the TV shows whenever they want.
whenever they want.
What's a TV season? When is it on? When would you like it to be on?
Well, and which is all great, but the downside is you don't have those, monumental watching numbers that we used to have back then, like for series finales and big events that were happening.
When Bob, my husband Bob, was running the AIDS hotline, and of course Dynasty, hugely popular show in the gay community, he had to go in himself and like call around to get people to work. I think it was Tuesday night, because he couldn't get anybody to come in on Tuesday night because it was Dynasty.
Yeah. Everybody was
like,
watching it.
I'll buy pizza for someone who comes in and works when it's Dynasty night. God, don't you be right? Does anyone have a VCR? Only a handful of people have VCRs. It's like, can't you set your VCR? No.
I remember hearing about VCRs and being like, that's not a thing.
Right?
They can't do that. A couple of quick things, Alison, before we wrap up. Anything else that you're working on that we can keep an eye out?
Let's see. Well, I'm working on a cookbook because I have series of cooking videos. If you go on YouTube, you can find Who's Going to Do the Cooking with Alison Arngrim, because Nellie couldn't cook, but I can. And Nellie was Nellie's big line, who's going to do the cooking? So I've been making these really great videos where really simple recipes. I'm just riffing and goofing around the kitchen, but simple things that people who think they can't cook can totally make. So it's like almost instructional. It's like you can learn to cook watching these videos. Just check it out. Who's going to do the cooking with Alison Arngrim?
That could help me, when I'm home by myself.
I'm writing the book to go with it, and it's like how to make your scrambled eggs really fluffy, and then really basic, easy to make things where you just you need a pan, you need a bowl, you need a fork, you don't need special equipment, like simple things that like, oh look, food, and I show you exactly how to make it. So I'm doing that, and I'm writing the cookbook to go with it. So I got the French show, I got the American show, it's gonna be, and then I got all the autograph shows coming up, Iowa, and making everything. And well, you can get the Nellie newsletter. If you email me loosegravelprod@aol.com, you get the Nellie newsletter, tells you where I'm going to be all the time, and the rest of the cast. And then of course I
love that you're still using AOL.
Well, we got this AOL account a long time ago, and then we realized a bunch of people had that address, and it's like, well, are we old having the AOL? Yes, but we have a lot of old people who have that address.
So you kept it. I love
it. So I have like a Gmail account, and I have other accounts, but it's like, just keep the AOL. So we just kept it like a light.
It kind of fits.
That it's there. And a lot of Prairie fans are like, yes, AOL. So we totally have an AOL address. And so yeah, I got the newsletter, and then I have my interview show every Tuesday night, the Alison Arngrim show. And then I've been doing stand-up online because the height of the pandemic, couldn't go anywhere. So I have a whole studio thing here and a backdrop. And we just had Nasty Nellie's birthday blast off, which was on stageit.com. So I also do whole shows in my living room where people can buy tickets.
Are you doing the interviews as yourself or as Nellie?
Oh no, it's in fact, that's funny because I opened the show saying, "Hi, I'm Alison Arngrim. Some of you may remember me as Evil Nellie Oleson." We put up the picture and go, "But tonight I'm Alison Arngrim, and it's the Alison Arngrim." And the whole thing is, it's all positive stuff. It's all about, we talk about the things that make you feel good, the TV shows that make you feel good. And we have really cool people on. We have famous actors, and then we have new authors or people who have some charity project that's really helping people. People who are doing cool things to make the world a better place. It's all that.
Sounds kind of like this podcast.
Yes, like happy things. Yes, we like that.
I would kind of like to see Nellie interview celebrities now, but in character and just be mean to them.
Freaking hilarious.
I'd watch that.
Right. I hear you're a celebrity, but my room at the Mercantile is still nicer than yours.
That's right. Yeah, I've watched that. So last thing, you went over some of them. Any other social media that you have that we can kind of look for you?
Gosh, I'm on everything. I'm on Instagram. I am on TikTok. I haven't made enough TikTok videos. I'm on YouTube. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Facebook. I'm on everything. Thinking of restarting my Snapchat. Yeah, I'm on everything. You find me Alison Arngrim on Facebook and Instagram. And as I said, the cooking videos are happening. There's still videos. I did readings of the Little House books during the pandemic. I got to 600 readings. They went 2.5 years straight. Read every single day,
Wow.
reading from Little House on the Prairie. And then
That's
I wound up,
impressive.
I read all of Laura's books twice, and then I read books about Laura, other books by Laura, books by Rose. I read The Wizard of Oz. I read Anne of Green Gables. It's like insane. And so I'll probably be doing some more wacky stuff like that. I did read The Raven, Edgar Allan Poe's The Raven on Halloween, and we did do Night Before Christmas, of course, on Christmas. So sometimes I do that. So I do stage readings.
I love how much energy you have. It's amazing.
I try. I had to have a nap today.
You can't beat a good nap.
Yeah, sometimes I do have to take a nap. People go, "How do you do it?" I drink coffee and I take naps.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, Alison, thank you so much. You have to come back at some. If you
yes, please, thank you.
Yeah, this has been a blast. All right,
and
hold
I
on
can say I still love that backdrop.
Yeah, next time you come, I'll put you in it.
Cool. All right, thank you.
I didn't realize it, and one of the guests I had is like, "Hey, there's no women in that background." And I was like, "Hey, you're right."
Oh, you're right. I'm looking because unless the shark is.
You might be my first one.
Yes, I think I need to be here because there are. I mean, I said, hang on one moment. Wait.
Okay.
Because the scene where I go down the hill in the wheelchair on Little House.
That's a great episode.
Yes, not.
Yes, you were
shot. God,
that's the shot.
This is what you would. Yeah, you would put that in there.
That's exactly what I'm doing it. That's a done deal.
That's
a done deal. That's a great episode, by the way. And I read where your arm was actually broke, and they had to redo. They didn't redo it, but they put the old cast over the newer cast.
I had broken my arm skateboarding, and then I said, "Well, wait, we have the show. You're in the wheelchair, so you're faking paralysis, but we could say you broke your arm." So they put an 1800s thing completely over the cast. And so then, of course, I'm down a hill in a wheelchair going, I have a broken arm. If I fall out of this, there's no seatbelts. This could be bad.
Luckily, it wasn't.
Luckily, I did not fall. Yeah.
You did not re-break anything. Everybody was fine. All right, Alison, hold on one second.
Thank you.
Well, that for me was just a terrific interview. Alison Arngrim, just the best. I stumbled a little bit over her name because on the screen under her name, she'd left the R out, and it threw me off with that. So kind of amusing, but I'm such a fan of hers. I love the fact that she played this character that was universally hated, but she did such a good job with it and embraced it to the point that she has spent decades now, using that platform to help with several different causes. And she talks about them there at the end, very needed help. And she's also made this, she just kind of embraced it. She's doing one woman shows. She's writing books. She just really, really getting into it. And I love that. I think she's funny. She's a good actress. She has unbelievable energy. I just so excited that I got to speak with her. Hope you enjoyed that. I know there's a zillion Little House on the Prairie fans out there, and I hope I did it a little bit of justice. Hope you enjoyed that. If you did enjoy it, and this is your first time checking out the podcast, and you're like, well, these guys aren't too bad, I'd like to help them out. Well, there's a few easy ways you can support us, and we really appreciate it. If you're watching, it's YouTube, MeisterCon Pod. Just hit that subscribe button. It's free. We won't spam you with a lot of email, but it'll give you access to all the video content from the podcast, and we've had unbelievable guests. I would put our guests up against any other show. I'm so proud of them. We could really use that support. So hit that subscribe button. If you're listening, wherever you're listening to your podcast at, whatever application you're using, just subscribe there. That helps us so much. We put out episode 520 today, and you can see all of those or listen to them. So the audio and the video versions are both on our website, meistercon.com. That'll also let you know, if we're going to Normandy or to Paris to check out Alison's French show, that'll be on the website. If we're doing anything in studio, if we're covering a convention, whatever we have going on, it'll be on the website, meistercon.com. So please check that out. Let us know who you'd like to see on the show, and we'll see what we can do. If you're a fan of 70s, 80s, 90s TV, we have had unbelievable guests from those eras. So definitely check out the content we have. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. Thank you guys so much. Until next time. Bye, everybody.